Welcome to the Indie Young Professionals podcast, where we help 18 to 29-year-olds be great adults. We're going to interview leaders throughout the city of Indianapolis and talk to them about some of their successes and failures so that you can learn from them as you walk along this journey of life. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Indie Young Professionals podcast. We hope you've been enjoying everything so far. I know we have been learning a lot from a lot of different people and a lot of different industries, from hairstylists to outsourced sales consultants, which is really cool. So today we're going to tackle just
Indy is full of great people.
I know, it's wild.
I love it.
So today we're going to tackle a whole new industry. And so the guy who's normally hosting you, Andrew Znachko, is with us. I'm going to be taking over hosting today, and he is
Introduce yourself, Jonathan. What's your name?
Oh, I'm Jonathan Norton. I'm always really bad at introducing myself. I just assume everyone knows me, and
you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, they shouldn't. So, so Andrew is the lead pastor of Antioch Indy here in Indianapolis. So we are a non-denominational church. And so today we're going to have some talks about like what does it look like organizationally, leading a church. We're going to talk about leadership a little bit. So Andrew, why don't you just dive into the start of this organization that is Antioch Indy, the 501c3, what that looked like from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it started out, my wife and I'm from Indianapolis, was in Texas for a while, moved back to Indianapolis in May of 2016 with my wife and my daughter, and my wife was pregnant at the time. So my wife and I, and then one other couple moved up here from Texas, a guy named Sam and Sarah Best. They moved up with us to help start this church. So, but staff was me and Sam. So me, on an organizational sense, me and one other guy started our church. We started in our house with about 20 adults and 20 people 3.5 years ago. And so as what that has looked like organizationally over the last couple of years, we've had some location changes and different things go on. And today, maybe there's 350 people or so on an average Sunday, with different organizational structures in there. We have a staff of 12 that is fully, supported within the church. There's no outside funding and things like that. There's no debt on the business, quote unquote, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just thinking about relevant or organizational type things that are just
absolutely
churchy stuff. But I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Is that good?
No, that's great. So, so something that we were kind of discussing when we were talking about how do we go at this? You know what I mean? Because I think being a pastor is a really interesting thing. And I think a lot of people have ideas about what that looks like from the aspect of religion, or, like they're basically just counselors or they're public speakers. And I think even just from the aspect of like, you moved up here with one other guy to start something that at the time was 20 people gathering in a house to now something that has property, has 350-ish people come and attend it. And so like, it's like, oh wow, 3 years and what is that, like almost 400% growth.
Right.
So that's a big deal. And so I think something that I was just thinking about as you were explaining all that is like, whoa, so like 2 people, but starting a business and all of the different skills that have to be like either learned or gained as that process is being built. So what were some of the struggles, I guess, with coming up here and being like, okay, we have to become jacks of all trades, master of none, and sort of master of some. So what does that look like, that learning process?
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm probably going to ask you to ask a more narrow question because that's really broad. So
okay.
Be thinking about that for a second. Just to your point, I hope that this conversation can be helpful from an entrepreneurial leadership perspective.
Absolutely.
Because you made the good distinction at the beginning, or the question was, what does it look like for the 501c3 organization? And, there's kind of a theological side of church. What is a church, and what does a church do, and what's a church all about? And there's kind of all that side of church / being a pastor. But in our context, there's absolutely a business side to it. I mean, at the end of the day, Antioch Indy as an organization is a 501c3 business. So it has a classification and everything like that, but it is a business in that sense. That's not all that it is, but it is a business. And so I hope that there's things that I can contribute. There's definitely a lot I've learned along the way. I think on the maybe the pastoral side and the entrepreneurial side, entrepreneur side, there's been a lot. So can you help me?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess I think entrepreneurial is a good word. So as someone who came here to build a business from the ground up with limited skills. We all have limited skills. There's something we all have to learn. I know I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos to do what I do now. And so I guess the question would be, how did you figure out how to do what was necessary to start this? Is that narrow enough?
Question. That's a really good question. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of starting something is getting to the point where you're willing to just jump off the cliff and learn how to fly on the way down.
That's good. That's good.
I think that. Yeah, I think that's at a bit of the core of somebody who is an entrepreneur. And a lot of people are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs look really different, and there's not one personality or definition or something like that for who is an entrepreneur, but there are things about a person that will make you more entrepreneurial or not. And I think part of that is, I mean, everybody walks up to the edge of the cliff, and at some point you just got to decide, is it time to jump or not?
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that. On the practical side of it, I did graduate with a business degree from Baylor University, so just like an undergrad degree. So I didn't get my MBA or anything like that, but I had a bit of a business background, which I'm really thankful for. Yeah, and didn't do great in all my classes, but at least there's some familiarity there of knowing a little bit of some of the questions to ask and some of the things to look out for, and having a little bit of a mindset for we have to build this as a healthy, sustainable business. And I think so part of that is I think something that a lot of people run into is whether it's a church or a business or non-for-profit or profit, a lot of times most people's businesses start because they have a good idea that they're passionate about. It doesn't start necessarily with a business plan. Yeah. And that's great, but at some point it has to become viable as a business. Your idea has to become viable as a business. And so you have to figure out the business side of it. But you can so easily lose the passion along the way because you start out with an idea you love, a mission that you want to go after. But then you have to start learning the business side of it because nobody knows everything, or you pull people along to help you with those things. And the gravity is always pulling you towards the business side of things. It's not pulling you towards the vision side of things, if that makes sense. Yeah, so absolutely. That matters and that's important, but that's, I think, when a lot of people start talking about burnout or get tired or lose their vision as an entrepreneur or a leader because the gravity pulls you towards the practicals, if that makes sense. And it's easy to lose sight of like, wait, I am so now swimming in the details. How did I get here? I'm not even doing the thing I set out to do. Yeah. I don't know. So I think that the idea of vision and values is so big in the leadership idea. Like if we're moving on to like ultimately like as an entrepreneur, your goal is to go from someone who's building a business to someone who's leading the business. And so vision being a huge part of leadership, vision and values. And so I guess it's like, I think a question, if you're starting out with something is like, you're, like you said, you're looking at the tasks, you're looking at what has to get done to get here. And I think your point is it all starts with the vision. If you don't have a solid vision and values, then you can never do enough tasks to get where you want to be unless you're convinced of what you're doing. And so how did you go about like building that passion and building those visions and setting those goals in front of you so that it was like, I know exactly what I'm running after? Because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Yeah, it's a great question. So there's the personal journey. so for me, in becoming a pastor, I never set out to be a pastor. And people even ask me, like, when did you know you were called to be a pastor? And I'm like, I don't know if I still don't know that I like, had this moment, you know?
Yeah.
But when I was 20, I'd grown up in church and everything, but I woke up one morning and was just like, I know my life's not going anywhere. On the outside, everything was great, but on the inside, I knew I was dead. And I just knew I can keep living my life and play this thing out, and this is just how it's going to go. Or I can really give my life to Jesus, which I don't even totally know all the answers for that, but I can do that and see if he can do anything with my life. And that just flipped me upside down in so many different ways. And I just kind of did one thing led to another as far as continuing school, started getting to know Jesus, serving in church, learning how to love and lead people in a church context and all that kind of stuff. And that just is that's where I came alive. And one thing led to the next, and people kept asking me to do things. And then at some point I'd go on staff at a church, and then I got asked to go back to Indy and start a church. And so that's where this all came from. So on the personal journey, and I think a lot of people today, like we talked about, their business comes from a personal passion, and there's usually a story behind that, which is really important. So there is the personal side of it. And that could be like a cause, or it could be money, which is like, I want to reach some certain financial goal, and so I'm going to leverage a business to try to get there. So that's really important on the personal side, is I need to know, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because when it gets hard, I need to be convinced that I actually want to do this. And I need to be able to remind myself how I got started, why I got started, and what am I even going for? So there's a personal side of that, and I think each one of us maybe will lean towards whether that is just down in our guts or whether that's written down on paper. And that's a personality thing. I think some people will write that down and they'll have it written, and some people just have it in their guts. Like they know why. I would lean more on the gut side of things. The challenge as things have grown, and the continued challenge to grow things that I'm seeing is, if I want to scale, I have to clarify and multiply the vision that I have in my guts. Because as any leader, I think, has some inherent capacity to just pull people along. And I mean, that could be charisma, or it could be just any number of things. And a person's natural capacity to do that might be 2 people, it might be 2,000 people, or whatever, in the sense of like, people will just follow me because of where I'm going, the way I'm going there, how I'm going about. Like I have an ability to pull a certain number of people along because I'm going there, and that's all. But at some point I hit that ceiling, and everybody will hit that ceiling. So if I want to scale past that, I have to start figuring out, how do I get what's in my guts clarified in my head? How do I get that worded on paper? And how do I get that multiplied into the hearts of other people, so that they're buying into the vision and not just buying into me? So I'd say in the last 12 months, that's been the biggest leadership lesson journey I've been on personally, is finding that now, I would say in the beginning, maybe the biggest asset that I brought to the table, the biggest contributing factor I brought to the team and the church and the organization, was just energy. Really, it was just like, I'm going and I'm not stopping, and I can't maybe exactly clarify where we're going, how we're going, what the values are. I've always had the vision, but what are the values? What are the specifics? Like, how are we putting nuts to bolts here? I maybe can't do that, but I'm going there, and so people will follow me on some level. But I'm just finding now, to multiply that at a bigger scale and a faster rate, I have to learn, and I have to take the time and space to get clear on a lot more things that I just naturally have in my guts, because then it actually gives people something to grab onto, and because they can't always grab onto me, number one, and number two, the point isn't for people to grab onto me. So it's not even the point, even if they can grab onto me. So there's some thoughts on a few things.
So I think going to like now a practical side of, because something you said, and like we know each other, so I know that like you readily admit, like, okay, like details are kind of hard for me. Like I'm always looking big picture, so details are kind of hard for me. And something like that came up as you were saying, like making sure that I put that down on paper in this and that. And I'm just like, gosh, that's so hard for me. Like, it is so hard for me to get out of my head and onto paper, or computer or whatever, like how this works, so that I can readily communicate it to other people around me. And so knowing that, like, that's something that you can struggle with from conversations, what were steps that you took to where, like, okay, I know where we're going, big picture, like zoom out 30,000 feet, I know where we're going. How do I make sure that the people who are coming around me, and this is something we can discuss later, but that also, like, in any 501c3, a lot of times you're going to have, like, volunteers, like people who are saying for free, I'm going to give you my time. And so, and whenever I want, I can back out, you know, at no harm to me. Yeah. And so not because you, like, need their help, but because you want them to stay involved. Like, it's important to make sure that they grasp and hold that vision as, like, maybe not as tightly as you, but as tightly as you can help them to. And so how did you conquer a lot of that? Like, this isn't naturally who I am, but I'm going to do this with the practical side of, like, putting things on paper and organizing as best as possible.
Really, really good question. I would say that right now I have all of that stuff better than I've ever had it, but it still needs to get better. So I would say it's not a point to arrive at necessarily completely. So there's been lots of drafts, lots of whiteboard time, lots of all of that, just like trying to get my guts out onto paper and think, like, okay, great. Felt good to get that out, but does that make any sense at all? And do I even mean what I just said right there? Like, do I even mean what I wrote down? What does that even mean? Yeah. So a lot of time, and I'd say for us in the last 90 days, we've, for the first time as an organization, gotten to the point where I'm really confident in the clarity that we have and being able to multiply vision, values, culture as an organization, including everybody. And then, as you know, as a staff, adding skills to that category has been really big for me. So, and each one of those has kind of had a unique journey. And so in saying that over the last 12 months, I've been the big lesson for me has been clarity as a leader. I've found that for this season right now, and that's actually really important. I think that you can't ever forget that everything is seasonal. You know, and there's a season for this and there's a season for that. So my rhythms look different now than they did 2 years ago, but that doesn't mean that my rhythms 2 years ago were wrong. Yeah. It was just different time, different place, different needs at different things. And so I think as a leader, we've got to be flexible on the practicals and the rhythms and all of that. Those are constantly changing, but I'm constantly finding that I'm having to refine what is my role in this organization. Because at the beginning, it was like, do everything. And then whatever you can't do, ask Sam to do. Like, those were our job descriptions. It was like, Andrew, do everything. Sam, do everything else. You know? Wow. And thankfully, they've matured. as I've matured and as he has matured and as we've added people to the team and all of that. So there's a season for different things. But I'm constantly asking, what is my role on this team? Because as things grow and multiply and scale, and as we look forward to wanting to do more of those things, we have the ability and the need for all of us, especially, you know, maybe we'll say on the staff, but we'll zoom in even in on me. I need to make sure I'm doing the things that only I can do. Because there's most things that are happening are not things that only I can do. Yeah. Most things are things a lot of people can do, and most things are things that there's somebody else that's better at that should do that thing other than me. Even though I could do it at a competent level potentially, there's somebody who's actually good at it. You know, who should do it. So what are my things? And I've narrowed that down to, like, really two things. There are two things in this organization that I have to do, and that it's nobody else's job or role to do in this organization in this season. So I've got to make sure I'm doing those things. But I'm totally digressing in a lot of different directions. But
did you find that really hard to do? Because I think in a way, a thought I had earlier was, you were like, when we moved up here, you know, I had my daughter, and then my wife was pregnant, and in my head, I'm also like, and you're also about to give birth to this church, like, because, you know, really, like, anything you start, any entrepreneur listening is going to understand that, like, when you start something, like, it becomes like your baby, and it requires all the care. Right. It's a part of your family. Right. And so when you got to that point where it was like, okay, like, we're too big for me to do everything and give Sam what I can't do. So I have to start hiring. I have to start handing off. Like, what were some of the struggles you had with, like, giving up control of something that you've always had absolute control over?
So good. Such a great question. That's where I am going to keep coming back to clarity. Most things that you probably ask me. So what I mean specifically in regards to your question is, I'm having to continually get more and more clear on what do I really care about.
Yeah.
The hardest thing for me letting go is I'm not personally clear on the two things about this thing I'm passing over to you. There are probably 2 or 3 things about this deal, this whatever event or department or whatever. There's like a couple of things that I really care about. The other 98 are totally up. They're up to you. Like, I care about them, but I'm giving them to you to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's true. But my difficulty has been, it feels like I care about everything, even though I actually only care about 2 or 3 things. So if I'm not clear on the 2 or 3 things I really care about, and this is like a personal thing, maybe I don't know if this is for everybody, but when I don't narrow down the 2 or 3 things that I really care about, then I feel like I care about everything. And when I feel like I care about everything, that's when I micromanage, because I'm kind of doing that frantically, because I have this feeling inside of me, like, when I give it to you, I want the things I care about and the things that I think need to happen. I need those things to happen. But if I don't even know what exactly those things are, then how do I fully even let go of it to let you do the things? Does that make any sense? I feel like it's not coming out. So I'm not really coming out real great. So what I'm learning is, when I'm delegating anything, or as we hired people. So last year we went from 2 full-time and a part-time person to a staff of 12 over last year. Yeah. And that was awesome. And a lot of that was this journey of, like, we're growing, and I see the needs and I see the things that need to happen, but a lot of it's kind of intuition type stuff. Yeah. Like, I know we need a person who has this type of role, is kind of where I was coming from. Yeah. So then we get those people on, but what really needs to happen is, okay, but what do these people need to do? There's a role, but, like, what are the tasks and stuff? And that's the detail stuff that I'm not good at, is defining down to the task level. And so my struggle has been in delegating. I have to take the time to say, okay, Jonathan, you are our content manager. And so I developed a vision for every role on our staff. It's not the job description, it's the role. So your role is to leverage media to share the gospel with our city and disciple our church. To me, that seems crystal clear. That's like, but for most everybody else, it's like, sweet, I'm down, but what should I do? Yeah. I'm like, well, do that. Yeah. So what that helped me do is, that's what I care about happening, is that media gets leveraged to share the gospel to our city and disciple our church. Okay, great. Now I can let go of it and say, now I can have something to assess this by. Is this happening? And I'm not just assessing, well, how did you spend the hours from 2 to 4 on Tuesday? Yeah. And the tasks, like, I don't really, like, I'm not measuring the win on, like, the gear that you buy or don't buy or whatever. Right. I'm really rambling right now.
No, I think a lot of that made sense and is a good segue into a broad question that we can spend the next 6.5 minutes talking about, which is, like, leading people. What has that looked like, and what have you learned from that? Because I think, how old were you when you started doing, like, leadership in church, like being in roles where people were under you?
24.
So you were 24 years old. Yeah. Like, that's really young.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That's really young. And so I'm sure that there was a big journey of just, like, failure and mentorship and blah, blah, blah to learn how to lead people. And so this might leak over into the next episode, but what are some big general things, and then we'll dive into specifics based off of what you say of leading people that you've learned in the last 6 years.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe what we can focus on now is I kind of have a definition of what a leader is that I adopted for myself years ago and thought I would use it like in one conversation that I was about to have, but it's just stuck with me, and I'm learning to like it, and it's been really helpful for me. And that is that a leader is somebody who carries vision and creates space. So what I've been learning is that when a leader is needed, what that means is there's need for a person who will carry a vision. And vision, you have vision for something you don't see. You have sight for things you do see. So somebody needs to carry the conviction and belief that there's something that needs to exist that doesn't exist right now. That's what I mean by a vision. So somebody has to carry that tension, carry that conviction, carry that burden to see that thing come to be. So somebody needs to carry the vision, and that person needs to carry the vision and then create space so that that vision can have something to exist in. And that's where people come in. Is a doer is somebody who has a vision and does it, and that's really important. You know, like something needs to get done, so I'm going to do it. The difference then, the leader is somebody is somebody who's creating space for that to be more than just me. So how am I creating space for other people to come in and actually make that vision come to pass? Because my vision isn't a vision for something I can do. It's bigger than that. It involves people. So the vision is a church, which means it's people becoming most alive in the things that they're created to do. So the vision isn't for me to have my toy that I get to play with and call, my organization. It's I've got to create space for people, which means I need to know what directions we need to go. I need to know and be able to figure out who has what skills that are needed at a given time. I don't need to do everything, but I need to know who's the best person to do certain things. I need to be able to give people clarity on here's exactly what I'm asking you to do. Because so that all of that's a really broad thing. On a really practical level, I would say one lesson on empowering people has been just learning that like people really, including me, we really love to hit home runs. Yeah. People really want to hit a home run. And I think everybody has that desire. People want to do a great job. Yeah. And feel like they did a great job. So as the leader, how am I setting people up to hit home runs? How am I doing the best I can to clarify exactly what needs to get done, give you the space, the resource, and the encouragement and the environment to be able to step in and execute on that thing, so that at the end of it, you and me and everybody can look at it and, and you can say, I did the thing. I did the thing that needed to be done. I did what was asked of me. I did a good job at it. It can be evaluated and all of that kind of stuff. But like, I came in and contributed. And so that's where clarifying the guts is so important. And that's been my weakness, is that I have the gut. Hey, I need this thing to get done. And people are like, cool, but what should we do? And I'm like, gah! So I need to step back and take the space and say, all right, it's my responsibility to set people up for a win, because people want to win, and it's about people. So how can I go through the process that I need to go through to make sure I'm providing that? Yeah. That's really good. Is that helpful? No, that's super. That's super good. We're gonna end this episode, and then we've got another one coming at you next week. We're gonna continue this conversation. I've got a lot of thoughts on leading people specifically that I think I really want to dive into. So hope you're enjoying it. Give us a follow on Instagram. Tell your friends if you think your friends need to learn about leadership and being a young professional in the city of Indianapolis. And so we appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Indie Young Professionals podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube as well as the bell so that you'll be alerted when we release new episodes. You can also follow us on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to know more about us,
and about the people that we're interviewing, follow us on Instagram at Indie Young Professionals. Thanks. Have a great day.